It's time, huh? Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Can you hear me? How are we doing, Jeremy? All right? This will be televised today. I'm Bill Nicholas, the city manager in DeKalb. We welcome you, and we appreciate your taking time out of your day to be here to talk about an event that happened last night at 808 Ridge in DeKalb. The people behind me are all involved in some fashion or another. I'm going to make some introductions. For those of you at the points where we will have a Q&A opportunity, because we're televised and we want to make sure the sound is a pretty steady level. We've got a roving mic here over in the corner, and if you could just pass it to your friends and fellow professionals, we'd appreciate that. I want to do some introductions. Mayor Jerry Smith, you're all familiar with him. Council member Carolyn Morris, First Ward Alderman. Fire Chief Jeff McMaster over here. Police Chief John Petrogallo. From NIU, Chief of Police Tom Phillips. Also in our audience, we have Deputy Chief Jason Johns. Shelley Perkins, the Executive Director of the DeKalb County Housing Authority. Harold Cubillo, did I pronounce? Pretty close. Northwest Illinois chapter of the American Red Cross. Pastor Joe Mitchell of the New Hope Missionary Baptist Church. So thank you all for joining us. We're going to begin with the fire chief, who is going to touch on the who, what, and when, and Chief Petrogallo will add to that, and then I'll have a few words, and some of the others up here will also have a few words. So, Chief, can you just describe generally what happened for the assembled media here?
Good afternoon. At 10:54 on July 9th, DeKalb Fire Department received a call for an active fire at 808 Ridge Drive with people trapped in a building. Upon fire units' arrival and along with law enforcement, we had found heavy fire and heavy smoke in the building, with people actively jumping from their apartments and yelling for help, needing assistance. While law enforcement assists with evacuation of the building, DeKalb fire crews deployed ground ladders to start rescuing people from the upper floors of the apartment building. At the same time, engine companies stretched hose lines into the building to start the suppression of the fire. All of this was done simultaneously. Because of the amount of fire, the known building, the construction, and the vast amount of resources that were needed, because at this time, because people were jumping, there were people laying in the yard needing medical assistance. We upgraded the alarm to include many of the DeKalb County fire departments to bring in additional fire apparatus and ambulances to begin treatment. As fire suppression was going on, we received more ambulances, along also with NIU paramedics and along with other law enforcement. We started to treat the patients on scene. 6 patients were transported to Northwestern Medicine Kishwaukee Hospital, 1 with life-threatening injuries and 5 with non-life-threatening injuries. At this time, once the fire was suppressed, we started to work towards finding out who was involved as far as the occupants and start to get a real handle on the situation. At this time, we also started an emergency fire inspection of the building to deem whether this was going to be tenable or not for the residents. After reviewing the fire area and the fire inspection, it was deemed that this building was not going to be able to be inhabitable, and therefore it was condemned through the City of DeKalb emergency condemnation procedures. At that time, we also started to work with law enforcement, the Red Cross, and we started our fire investigation group to start looking into the cause of the fire.
Good afternoon. From a law enforcement perspective, our primary focus is to hold those accountable for this incident responsible. We do have leads, and I'll keep my comments specific to the investigation. This is kind of the frustrating part, is although we have some leads and everybody wants to know, we don't want to compromise our case to divulge too much information for fear that it could harm it. So our investigation right now, we're following up on some leads. We are currently interviewing residents, getting comments from them. One of the most important things that we do on any investigation that we conduct is we look around for video surveillance in and around where an incident happened, and we're currently doing so. So our hopes is that this will be fruitful to the case. We hope our investigators are working tirelessly on this case. And we know, time is of the essence to maintain evidence. So we're hopeful that we should have an update for you relatively shortly. Within the next 24 hours, there are some things that we're working on that we hope will be fruitful to this case. What I saw last night was a lot of teamwork. It was a very chaotic scene. I saw a lot of agencies working together to help the residents that were in need last night, and put a lot of resources together, to help toward that end. So it was a good effort by the first responders that were there last night. So within the next 24 hours, I hope to have some update for you, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
At this time, if you have any specific questions for either of the chiefs, would you like to ask those? Does anybody have a question?
Hi, my name is Sarah Jesmer. I'm from WNIJ. I have a question for you, Chief. Well, either of you guys. You said that your investigation, you want to keep a lot of it as it's developing, kind of under wraps. I understand that, and I understand where you're coming from. I wanted to ask about a comment that you made about video surveillance in the area. Have you found that there are video cameras in that building that are working?
There's a number of cameras in that neighborhood, and we have a good idea where almost all of them are, which is a huge benefit to law enforcement. There are working cameras in that building, and there are working cameras around that building and in that neighborhood immediately adjacent to that 808 Ridge. So we're hopeful that we should find something on that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Hi, just for the people watching, Kelsey Reiki from the Daily Chronicle. I don't know if the fire chief or police chief can confirm whether or not there are working locks on that building. I was told by a couple residents that there are a few that are not, so people can enter in and out as they please. And then whether the fire alarms actually went off last night seemed to be a question, so I don't know if that's something that you can confirm, Jeff, or...
This building, as far as the locks, I would have to confirm whether the locks were working at this time. I know we were, whether they made forcible entry is what I'll have to find out. As far as the smoke detectors, this building does have a manual pull station, which means that it alarms in the building only. It also does have smoke detectors that are common in the house. There were some smoke detectors going off upon my arrival. As far as the extent of the alarm system going off, I would have to check with the first in crews.
And when you say manual fire alarms, do you mean like the one that you have to pull?
That's correct.
To turn them on?
Usually is what they have a box at each exit, and that allows a resident to pull the fire alarm and then to exit the building to safety.
And then one more question. Do we know, I know that there was a fire in the complex a couple weeks ago. Do we know if there's any connection between this one and that one?
At this time, that's under investigation.
Okay.
Also, this is a question just as I pass it around the room, just for either of you chiefs. Do we know what set the fire at this point? I mean, how that fire was set?
We have a good idea, but that's something that we'd like to kind of keep close to the vest.
Sure thing.
Eventually, if we end up with a person of interest, those are questions and information we'd like to get directly from them.
Okay. And then my last question is, do we have a status for the 6 people that were hospitalized?
We do not know what if they are all out of the hospital. We do know that some of them are, but as far as whether they are all out of the hospital, that's unknown at this time.
Hi, my name is Jeff Wright from WLBK. We know you're keeping the investigation as you said, close to the vest as you can, but is it the opinion of all departments that this particular apartment complex might have been specifically targeted? And is there any possible motive for why this has occurred, especially in the last couple of weeks with this particular building?
We have had at least 5 fires in that building specifically. As far as motive goes, we do not know a motive behind these. We don't know if they're connected. Some of them have similarities to them. So we're keeping an open mind. We are looking at the possibility of all of these being related or not. So we just have to, follow the leads and gather as much information as we can.
Thank you.
So this might be a question for, I don't know, HUD or Red Cross. But when we talk about finding housing for the people that were displaced, I know that some of them, in conversation with me, had mentioned that they don't have renter's insurance. So maybe just for general question would be sort of what can be done in that situation for the 140 people that need to find homes.
Good afternoon. So the American Red Cross is here staying true to our mission, which is to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of adversity by mobilizing the power of volunteers. Since 11:40 p.m. last night when we received the call, our volunteers have actively been engaged doing just so, working with our wonderful partners stand behind me today. We are, at this point, providing shelter, a safe shelter for clients who are displaced. They have a place to lay down, rest, and also get some food. Those are the services that we're providing. We also have a wonderful team of health services, most of them retired nurses, who can come along and provide counseling and so forth. Thank you.
As far as renter's insurance, I cannot advocate enough for always having that if you're a tenant, but that should be no bearing to getting assistance or support in this instance. We will be having probably another agency. We've contacted Family Service Agency. They will be joining the crowd and hopefully being able to offer some much needed assistance.
And then piggybacking on that then, for residents, is it just as simple as they call you if they need help, or how does that actually work? And also, what if they can't, if they don't have a car, how do they get to you?
Can I start with this, and then you guys can fill in the details? So I just spoke with a resident a few minutes ago, and what I told her was, first step is check with your renter's insurance, see if you have it, and call that company. The second step is going to be touching base, and Tiffany's in the audience. She can correct me if I'm wrong. But the second step would be touching base with Tiffany Meadows and seeing if there's any way that Hunter Properties can get you into an alternative location. And then I believe after those 2 steps, if those don't work, I would say the third option would be what you guys have to offer. And Can you elaborate on how they would get in touch with you if they need that?
At this point, the shelter, the American Red Cross shelter, is located at 507 East Taylor Street. Clients, all they have to do is come in, check in, and fill out a client intake form, it's called, and then we'll take them from there. Thank you.
Just quickly here, one more question I have. What is the estimated damage cost from last night's fire?
So far, the initial damages for the building is at $100,000, but that's initial.
Also, Jeff, do you know if any pets or anything were killed as a result of the fire? And talking with some tenants, some said they were able to get some out, but everything was happening really fast. So I don't know if that's the knowledge that you would have.
That was a priority of all the agencies. Once we started fire suppression and we realized how many pets were involved, we activated the DeKalb County Animal Control, and they got a hold of Tails, who came out and with their resources and helped the tenants because they couldn't bring their pets into the emergency shelters, and was helping them get a place for their pets. In the meantime, the pets were checked on, the ones that were left in the apartments, to make sure that they were safe, and then they were evacuated after it was safe to do so. There were no pets injured in this event.
This is just a question for you as American Red Cross. How long are you guys prepared to temporarily house people?
We're prepared to do so as long as the mission calls for. As you say, temporarily, that's a key word. So our mission is to bridge the gap between the immediate disaster and help folks get into the road to recovery. So we're not a long-term recovery program. We're there to assist folks, and we do so in many ways, be it through counseling, doing casework, and follow-on counseling and things like that.
Recovery as in, can you expand on your word choice, recovery?
Sure. Like I said, we have disaster health services, wonderful group of retired nurses mostly, who come alongside every time we open up a shelter and provide counseling services. Also, we can replace medicines or any type of medical equipment that might have been burned up in the fire. For example, if you had a CPAP and it got burned up, we might be able to replace that. So again, we help folks help themselves, and we provide some assistance on the way and put them back on the road to recovery.
Like health-wise?
Health-wise, mentally, with shelter, with food, anything we can provide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you have some questions, we can field some at the end, too. I'm just going to take a couple minutes, and then I'm going to yield to people standing behind me here who haven't had a chance yet to speak. I want to echo what has been said here, my sincere gratitude to those people who are first responders, police and fire, NIU police very much involved as well, people who opened up the nursing school and helped triage some of the issues that had presented last night, and the people here tonight or this afternoon. Thank you very much for your dedication and your responsiveness. So what happens next? That was the story last night. You've heard a little bit about the story as it stands today. What's next? Well, there are a couple things I could say about that, and then I'm going to speak more generally about what the city's role is in the days ahead. So one thing that's next is for the property owner to know what are the conditions expected in order to reopen the complex. And in the next 24 hours, I'll have those conditions in writing for you, Tiffany, and they'll be very explicit. I don't think there'll be surprises. It'll be in accordance with our codes and ordinances, And there'll have to be ultimately an inspection of all the spaces that have been closed, which is the whole complex at this point. So, looking beyond the next 24 hours, why did this happen? Was it bad luck? Was it the phase of the moon? Was it one of those things? None of those. As Chief Petrogallo said, a number of things are being investigated at this point. But we're reasonably certain, and I hope I don't give away too much here, that the mattresses that were at the heart of the fuel source for this fire last night didn't just grow up out of the carpet. So how is it that mattresses appear in a common hallway that is also an emergency egress hallway? And how is it that they're lit? We have a fabric of law here in the city of DeKalb. It's available and readable for anybody, tenant, landlord, interested citizen to read. Interestingly, just Monday night, the council updated that handbook, the DeKalb Tenants Handbook. Has lots of names, lots of do's and don'ts, reciprocal responsibilities on the part of the tenant and the landlord. And going back to the earliest days of this incorporated city, we set out some expectations for what we would consider to be safe and secure housing. And always, always, when people are renting or people are dependent on somebody else to generally control the environment in which they live, we expect that they can get out quickly and safely with the most warning possible. Last night, what we saw was people leaping out of windows. That's not acceptable. And why is that? Did they know not to use the doors? No. That was what they considered to be their best recourse under the circumstances. It's shameful. It speaks to a cynical indifference to the conditions of that particular complex. It speaks to a business model that puts a return on investment ahead of the welfare of the people the complex serves. There are other people here who can speak more eloquently to that than me, but as the chief law enforcement official for the city of DeKalb, I intend to see that that stops. So what happens next? From my pen and from my office, the conditions for the reopening will be made available. And we will see to it that, if necessary on a daily basis, we have access to the facilities so we can make sure that they're maintained. And Tiffany, your smiles aren't going to make it any easier for you. I will say this, and this is promising. There is one contact person with Hunter Properties who's been very helpful to us in the last couple of months. An unlikely source, not involved in property maintenance, not involved in day-to-day management. And that's the attorney who's been defending them in court against us, Clay Campbell. But for his intercession, and he wasn't involved last night, intercession in a number of incidents and conditions in the last 2 months, we would have had other people dislocated and relocated. We appreciate his efforts, and I wanted to make that clear. But an attorney can't control his client. An attorney can't keep a place clean, can't keep a place fire safe. That has to come from others. And until that management is able to deliver those, we are not going to rest, we are not going to be satisfied. And we are tired of this shameful condition in our community. Take a look around. As you leave here, drive through the downtown. promise, hope, new construction, new development. That's what we want to talk about. That's what we want to have a press conference about, not this. Those people who want to pull in another direction or are on notice, we won't tolerate it. At this point, I'd like to introduce Pastor Mitchell, who has a few things he might want to share with us.
Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, let me say thank you to all the first responders on the outstanding job that you all did to care for people in their time of need. Thank you very much. Animals as well in their time of need. Thank you very much for your response. Couple of things. Number one, I'm not the mayor. Number two, I am not the city manager. I do not have to be politically correct. I can be honest. I'm a pastor, and my concern is for people. And the way people were living in 808 Ridge is a disgrace before God. I will share a story with you that I shared with the chief of police and the chief fire and the city manager. Member of my church, single mother, graduate of Northern Illinois University, and her and her daughter lived there. Mother got extremely sick, had to be hospitalized for several weeks. Called and asked if her daughter could come live with us while she is hospitalized. Absolutely no problem. Says she needs to go get some things from the place so that she has clothes so she can go to school, continue in a normal life. No problem. Took myself and the 17-year-old child over to get things out of the apartment. What I witnessed and what I saw with my own eyes on that property is not any way for any human being to live. The odors, the smells, the lack of security is not how people should live. The fact that there's children that live in conditions like that is deplorable, and there's no other way to say it. I informed this young lady's mother that she will be staying with us for the remainder of her high school years because they will not be going back to that property. There's no way with a good conscience I could allow them to go back to that property. What upsets me even more is that there's this narrative that's happening in our community right now around crime. And we want to point at people as it relates to crime. And I truly believe people should be held responsible for the crimes that they commit. But when are we going to start holding places and properties responsible for making conditions conducive for crime? If you ask the chief of NIU, if you ask the chief of DeKalb, and you ask for the data for the number of calls they get for that building, there is a reason why they get the number of calls that they do for that building. It is time that we as a city, we as a community, start caring about people and start holding these institutions and organizations accountable for their actions. We know there's a wonderful plan that has come out about North Annie-Glidden. Our church is in North Annie-Glidden. We are going to be a part of making a positive change in that community. One of the major things that has to happen is property owners have to be held responsible. People have to be treated with respect and with dignity. And if that's not happening, we need to make it happen or ask people to leave. And I say that with the care of people who are oppressed, who are disenfranchised, and that's the only place they can live. We have to do better as a community. We have to do better as people in positions of leadership to make sure everybody in this community is treated the way they should be treated, with respect and with dignity. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I'm Jerry Smith, Mayor of the City of DeKalb, and as any chief administrative officer, any city administrator, any mayor of any municipality in this county, in this region, in this state, in this country, one of their mantras is public safety. If that isn't the number one mantra, it should be. And in the city of DeKalb, believe me, public safety is key. I am so fortunate as the mayor of this municipality to have the collaboration and the teamwork of folks that are standing behind me. City Manager Nicholas and I met earlier this morning, and we talked about what happened. We talked about what needs to happen immediately. We were talking about things like shelter, clothing, food, medicine. I asked Bill, I hope some of those residents are able to get back into the building to retrieve some of those necessities, if you will. And so I would hope, with the assistance of partners like the university, the Housing Authority, the American Red Cross, and other social service agencies, as they bolster our efforts of the DeKalb Police Department, the NIU Police Department, the City of DeKalb Fire Department, and yes, Joe, the faith community in our community. We are going to do everything we can in the present to address those issues. Now let me mention something that Bill alluded to. What do we do going forward? Bill has outlined some of the problems that we've experienced as we address this entire issue of public safety. And I'm going to ask First Ward Alderman Morris, along with the other 6 aldermen representing this city council, to firmly, let me make it clear, to firmly stand before our city manager as he attempts to do some of the things that he outlined 5 minutes ago. We are so fortunate to have good collaboration, good partnership, and for those 6 or 7 folks who were injured, I pray for them, I pray for their recovery, I pray for those who are suffering so many of the intangible things. They didn't get scratched, they didn't get burned, but there's pain there. We want to do everything we can now and in the coming months to erase some of that misery, some of that pain. So on behalf of the citizens of the city of DeKalb, I appreciate our media today coming forward. I appreciate those of you in attendance. And we're going to ask God's help as we get through this very, very unfortunate day in the city of DeKalb. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, this is actually for the fire chief. Sir, would there be, once the, and also for Manager Nicholas, once the building would be reopened per your instructions, would there be like increased fire safety initiatives made, such as escape ladders, escape ladders installed in second story windows, and more fire, more smoke detectors and of the like?
Well, we can require what our codes spell out for these circumstances, and I can assure you that that will all be met. And the other element, which I believe the management has said they would be willing to do but hasn't yet, and that is a private security watch, which will help not only with some of the police calls to that area, but also to help with the feeling of protection from the kinds of fires that happened last night. Okay. Kelsey.
Bill, can you speak to the status of the 400 plus code violations that the city is currently in litigations with
I can't.
against Hunter property?
Why did I think you might ask that? Just bear with me. Well, to speak. So all 414 of the prejudgment cases that have been referenced a couple months ago were up before Judge Brady about a month ago, and a total of about $113,000 worth of fines were paid.
And when were they paid?
Within, I can't give you the exact date, but within 10 days they had to be paid. So. Any other questions? Well, thank you all for being here today, and we hope you have a safe afternoon.